Welcome to another edition of Saturday Sit Down. This week we stay right here in southern Alberta, Lethbridge actually, as we catch up with three-time WHL finalist and Memorial Cup champion Mike Wuchterl. And of course, you still live in Lethbridge, Mike. So how has life been treating you over the last 6 to 8 months through the pandemic?
You would ask that question there, Forbesy, and I'm going to hit you with a positive answer. I believe every negative situation has an opportunity to have a positive outcome. So here at Exhibition Park and in my life, I always look at every negative opportunity for a positive way to kind of turn it around. So we've been doing that here with our events at work, and me and my son are finding new ways to kind of stay busy at home as well. So it's been fun. It's been challenging at times, but nothing great ever came out of something being easy, right?
That's for sure. That's for sure. Perseverance, right? It's an important thing in both sport and life. We'll talk about what you're doing now a little bit later on, but I want to roll the clock back to your time in Edmonton before the WHL. What did you know about the WHL, and maybe how did you get your foot in the door with the expansion ever at Silvertips?
So yeah, growing up in Southeast Edmonton, Mill Woods, I lived there till I was 14, turning 15 when I moved away. But yeah, I grew up playing for Mill Woods minor hockey. Made my way into AAA hockey, playing for the Southside Athletic Club. I actually got cut my Bantam AAA year, so I went into the citywide draft and ended up playing for the Knights of Columbus on the north side there. Found a home there right away, but loved playing junior or minor hockey in Edmonton and all the friends that kind of come up through it all. But I would say how I got my foot in the door was that word perseverance again. I kind of have a relentless way of playing on the ice, and I was just not going to be turned down, sort of thing. I missed my draft year, didn't get drafted. I was one of the undrafted players for my 87 born age group. But at the same time, got invited to many, many camps. So Everett Silvertips was one of them. At that point in time, they didn't have much of a roster because they were an expansion team. So I saw a huge opportunity there, me and my dad and my agent. So we went to camp, and I kind of went all in with that with my poker hand. Never been punched so many times in the head in training camp as that one in Strathmore there, but managed to kind of make a name for myself and find a spot on the team as the only 16-year-old at the time with the expansion draft. So it was a kind of a good personal feat, but was definitely an uphill battle.
There aren't a lot of players that are able to crack a WHL lineup at 16 having not been drafted. How much pride did you take in being an undrafted player in the Bantam draft and still succeeding and making the WHL in your first year of eligibility?
Like I said, it wasn't easy. It was probably one of the greatest feats of my hockey career, but going to camp with an open mind and a work ethic is how I did it. I wasn't scared or kind of affected by the older kids. If anything, I saw it as a challenge. And like I said, I bet you every single vet on that team or on that ice and in that training camp skated by me and gave me a shot at least once. So I went there with a mission. Not only was I a physical presence and kind of that guy on the ice, that agitator, I was managing to put the puck in the net. So I was doing it all in camp. And like I said, I just kind of created that opportunity for myself where I wasn't going to be turned away.
What was that first year like? Obviously, it was a successful year on the ice. You guys won the U.S. division. You'd go to the WHL final that first year with Everett. But what was it like playing for and being a part of an expansion team in the Western League?
Oh, it was, you got to grow up fast. So like I said, I left home from Mill Woods there at 15 years old and jumped onto a team there in Everett, Washington, and going to the school in the States in a new country, learning the Pledge of Allegiance every morning. That was new to me, but I got her down pat. So if anything, it was one of those scenarios where you're chasing your dream from minor hockey up until junior hockey. So, that opportunity was at the door. Being a young man at that point in my life, I was terrified to be honest, but at the same time, I was so excited that was going to trump any other feeling of emotion that I had there. So I kind of, like I said, I dove in feet first. The organization was really, really good with working with my parents and myself and schooling and everything to make sure that transition was easy. I had great billets that had young families, so I could kind of fit right in. But a lot of it has to do with your family and your team kind of looking out for you, making sure that they're finding an ideal scenario so that homesickness doesn't set in that first year. I believe I only played 42
41.
games. 41 games, yeah, thank you. My first year, and I believe up until Christmas, I only had 19 games logged. So you can imagine that the second half of the season went a little bit better. But that first half of the season in my rookie year was a big character building moment. But at the same time, to go back at Christmas and practice with all my old buddies, to see the elevation in my game and what practicing at that level just does for you as a young player. So it was definitely a great decision to kind of commit to Everett and go there as a young kid and really kind of learn the ropes.
You really got thrown right into the fire. I mean, Kevin Constantine is a legendary coach, both at the Western League level, NHL, of course, too, and many a story about Mr. Constantine. But what did you take as a 16-year-old, a young man? And one thing that I've noticed in my 6 years in the league is you see a player come in at 15 or 16, and when they come in compared to when they leave, it's night and day. So how did playing in the WHL at 16 under a coach like Kevin Constantine, who I feel holds his players to a really high standard, help you not only as a hockey player, but as a person as well?
So yeah, obviously Kevin Constantine is one of those great hockey minds. I refer to him as, the passion of the game is it's flowing through his veins at such a high level and so much pressure in those veins that, he's really going to kind of burst at any second. But at the same time, he's very much so understands the game at a level or has broken down the game to a detail point that and understands it in a way like nobody else. So kind of coming from a young age and young teams and jumping into the Western League, you talk about systems and you talk about the right way to point your feet and where your stick goes on the ice. Those small details of the game that I almost didn't know existed as a 15, 16-year-old, joining the league and having a coach that coached, the Mario Lemieux and the Yarmer Jaegers, really kind of opened your eyes to the level of the game and the detail of the game and how those pros break it down and not that it doesn't become fun, but obviously it's very strategic. So that next level of the game and walking into the league with a coach of that level was really just kind of a reality check for me because of what we were learning, how we were thinking, and how we were playing the game. I think you can relate to that year. We played to win hockey games 1-0. We iced the puck when we were in trouble, and we kept it really simple. And that taught me in junior hockey when you have the buy-in of 25 guys or a complete team that you can accomplish pretty amazing things, with a great leader and that buy-in. So we had 25 guys working towards a common goal with that leader that really understood the game, and that created that unique kind of cohesion or that team atmosphere for us to kind of go to that finals and really make a run with it. We got exposed in the finals against Medicine Hat, a great coach and a great team, but we won't talk about that part, right?
Yeah, Medicine Hat got you a couple times.
Oh yeah, they had my number for sure, at least with many different teams. Medicine Hat was always a challenging series for sure.
You mentioned that you go to the final that year and such a great run for an expansion team, and you played for some great coaches in your WHL. We talk about Kevin Constantine, Don Hay in Vancouver, Mike Dick here in Lethbridge. A couple of years in Everett, and then you get traded to Lethbridge. Being an Alberta guy from Edmonton, how excited were you to find out the news that you'd been traded a little bit closer to home than what it is in Everett, Washington?
So I had mixed emotions. Obviously I made the team 15, 16 years old. So I was getting comfortable in my 17 and a half year kind of thing, that 2.5 year mark. So I was really kind of finding my role. I was building a fan base there and really kind of feeling that second home. So when I got traded from Everett, I kind of rocked my socks a bit. We were on a 2-week road swing up in Canada, actually. So all I had was a duffel bag of Everett Silvertips track clothes and shirts and stuff, and there I go with a garbage bag of hockey equipment and my Everett tracksuit to Swift Current from Calgary there. So it was a bit of an emotional roller coaster. It hit me hard because, like I said, I did have that second home in Everett, and I knew I was leaving it. And the way it happened, being on the road like that, it definitely added another layer to it. But I did have family in Calgary because I'm from Edmonton, so they were there watching the game. And I ended up driving with my mom and stepdad there out to Swift Current from Calgary. So that really calmed me down a bit. And walking into any new room is never fun. But at the same time, after you play a game with them and you go to war with them, you really start to find your new friends and find your new place. So, that first trade really kind of taught me the poise of don't let your emotions really get the best of you, and really kind of have an open mind and really kind of resort back to your roots, what got you there in the first place, because that will kind of continue to take you on throughout the rest of your career.
That year after you were traded, you played 30 games with the Hurricanes, and then you'd come back the next year and play 41 before getting traded again. That 06-07 season, before you were traded to Vancouver, did you get the sense that the Hurricanes were a team that were kind of on their way?
Yeah, so I believe I was actually one of the first trades that Rodeo Roy Stasiak made there when he'd come in. So I took that as a compliment because as a new general manager coming in, he's looking to build a team and to build something year over year to be proud of. So yeah, definitely coming back to the Hurricanes, I knew there was a bit of a rebuild in progress. The names of the Colton Yellowhorns, the Klinkhammers were on their way out, the Kyle Pesses. And we really kind of started a rebuild. So we had a lot of young talent, and I was optimistic about coming and kind of going from there. So yeah, no, Roy's always been great to me. He's always been a transparent guy with me, and really kind of worked with me throughout my career to give me that opportunity to play my role to the best of my ability. I was a bit of a line walker or a fence walker, you could call it, but all of my superiors and all of my brass and every organization I ever played for had the most trust in me to go out on the ice and do my thing.
You would then get traded to the Vancouver Giants, and I remember that '07 year fondly because, of course, as you know, I grew up on the West Coast, and my exposure to the WHL was the WHL on Shaw and the Vancouver Giants because at that time the Victoria Royals weren't a thing. So that year with the Giants, it was a legendary year. So when you get traded to that team, who was hosting the Memorial Cup and was well on their way to being a championship caliber team, what was that excitement level to be joining a team like that, coached by Don Hay with Milan Lucic and all the players that you could list?
I can't. The smile hits my face again because it gives me goosebumps thinking back to that day. I can actually relive the moment here pretty good for you, even with my concussions here. So basically, I remember we were practicing in Lethbridge that week, and Roy had pulled me in. Like I said, we were super transparent with each other, and he'd said, we love what you're doing here. Keep it up. You're safe, kind of thing. Like, you're not on the trade block. We're not looking to trade you. We're looking to really kind of move forward with you in our lineup. So I wasn't practicing because I had a bit of a bit of a bump or a bruise or something like that. So I wasn't on the ice that day. And I remember watching practice and then the boys come off and go into the room after, and then all of a sudden I get called into the room, right? And this is around trade deadline. So I'm pretty relaxed going, okay, well, Roy told me I'm safe, so I shouldn't really have anything to worry about. Sure enough, I go in and Roy's sitting there across the table and he's kind of got a smirk on his face, and I'm trying to read him, like, what's going on here? Like a bit of a panic sweat setting in. And sure enough, he says, I know I said I wasn't going to trade you, but, and then right away, like, I'm ready to break out into tears. Like, here we go again, right? And then he explains to me that I'm headed to the Vancouver Giants, who are hosting the Memorial Cup. And this broken face kind of just turned into this big grin on my face. And I said, well then. So I definitely had some mixed emotions of leaving the team I just kind of come to, and we were starting that rebuilding phase. But the opportunity that knocked on my door there, and for Rodeo Roy to really kind of acknowledge that and give me that opportunity to go and have a chance to play in the Memorial Cup was by far ended up being the biggest highlight of my career. I can't talk enough good things about Vancouver as an organization, and as well as Roy for kind of seeing that opportunity and letting me go do that.
I remember what it was like in Vancouver during that tournament. I went to a round robin game, ironically against the Medicine Hat Tigers, who you guys had lost to in the WHL final in a wild 7-game series previously, and you guys lost that game. But I remember beyond the game itself, I remember the atmosphere in Vancouver, and I think even up until recently, it held the all-time record in attendance for a Memorial Cup. So being a part of that, and then ultimately being a part of the team that would win against Medicine Hat, I imagine it was a sweet moment for you, having lost to them twice in the final, but also having that opportunity of elation in front of a packed Pacific Coliseum, which was so vibrant.
Yeah. So yeah, if you can recall back to the WHL finals that year, it ended up going to Game 7 double overtime, where I believe Brennan Bosch scored from almost the red line in a foggy, packed, too full, old school Medicine Hat barn there. So it was an eerie finish. It really took the air out of our tires, but obviously we knew the war wasn't over. So we claimed that as a battle, and a battle we lost and we could learn from. With that being said, we went to work, and a guy leading the team like Don Hay, you could bet that team was going to be ready for the Memorial Cup that year. So sure enough, we went back to work, and we ended up meeting Medicine Hat in the round robin, where they surprised us again there too. But the way that the battle or the war went, we ended up meeting them in the finals there, and it came down to one game, winner take all. So it was a scenario where our big guys, the Milan Lucics, the Spencer Mahatchuks, the Wasey Rabbits, Kendall McCardles, all these big name guys stepped up for us, and we're those players. But we were deep. There was a line there of Garrett Hunt after we broke his leg, but Garrett Hunt, myself, and Milan Lucic. And I always think back to that line because I've never seen one like it since, and I would have been terrified to play against us too.
Yeah, I remember watching. I remember the round robin game I went to. A little reminisce for me. It was a 1-0 Tigers win, and Wasey Rabbit hit a goal post in that game, and the crowd erupted. The goal horn went off, and then of course it was called back because it hit the post. But such a fond memory for me, and I wasn't a part of the team. So when you get to that pinnacle, and you at that point you had gone to the final already twice and lost. So to get to the pinnacle of capturing a Memorial Cup, what is that like from a player's perspective?
Honestly, you can dream of it, but I call it the Stanley Cup of junior hockey. And even then, it's one of the hardest trophies in sports to win, because you got to win your Stanley Cup, and then you take all these other leagues and you put them in a tournament to win another Stanley Cup. So, it's one of the hardest trophies in sports to win. When you talk about it on a stage and a platform like Vancouver, I got goosebumps again because that PNE, man, it's an older barn, but we had that place just packed full, and the white towels and the whiteouts. I remember going in after the win, and we couldn't hear each other. Our ears were ringing still. So like we were deafened by the crowd. And yeah, to see that support, across Canada as well as in Vancouver in our hometown like that, was unbelievable. Not to mention I have family living directly in Vancouver, so I was able to share that with them as well. Thinking back of playing at that level and that platform, I still chase those highs in life to try and find, my wins or my Stanley Cups now in my career. There's one right behind me right there, actually. But yeah, no, it's completely unbelievable. I can't thank the organizations enough, from the Hurricanes to the Vancouver Giants, for the experience we had as players. And not to mention just that overall kind of to see how the city recepted that tournament, and the places we were, from traveling on boats to eating at fancy restaurants downtown to getting Armani suits sized. It was just an experience like no other, and then to be able to take the whole tournament and remember it back as really that we really didn't leave anything on the table. And then obviously that fairy tale ending against Medicine Hat really kind of capped everything off.
You would play one more year in the WHL. Your overage year, you'd start with Vancouver, the defending champs, Memorial Cup champs, and then you get traded back to Lethbridge. What was that news like? How was it broken to you? And going from a team that had traded you to Vancouver, you reached the pinnacle, and now you're going back to a team who was well on their way to be a team that could do some damage. What's that like?
So I remember it distinctly, actually, because it was actually another emotional time for me. I remember going back to Vancouver for training camp. We actually for training camp every year we climb Grouse Mountain. You're probably familiar with
Grouse
that.
grind, yeah.
The Grouse grind. So yeah, you can relate to that. Every year for the Vancouver Giants, we have a mentality that is, you start at the bottom of the mountain and we sprint our way up at the beginning of the year. So I very distinctively remember fitness testing that year, and I was a Wuchterl, so my name was at the bottom of the list. And guess who was behind me? Don Hay, training for a marathon. So I remember sprinting up that mountain a little bit out of shape because it was training camp, and welcome back kind of the season. And I'll never forget looking over my shoulder that whole way up, that 45 minutes or half hour, however long it took, seeing Don Hay right in my ankles, thinking that man cannot catch me. And then we get to the top, and he says to me, "Who has number 5 on the back of their shirt?" Because I had a big number 5, and I put up my hand, and he goes, "I couldn't catch you." So it felt good for me to know that he was dogging after me, but that man could move at his age for what he was training for. So kudos to him. With that being said, you get to the top and you get that bit of feel good. And at the end of the year for the Giants, we celebrated on top of Grouse Mountain. You'll see there's pictures of us holding holding the trophy up there with the Mem Cup. So there's kind of that, you got to earn that your way to the top of the mountain. And at the end of the year, after we won, we all got to ride up on the gondola. So it was a nice feeling to kind of earn that trip up. With that being said, getting invited back to training camp, going through the growth grind again, and really kind of finding that new home, getting comfortable again, I knew that I was kind of the short straw, the odd man out, because they had some 19-year-olds that were turning into 20-year-olds this year that kind of come up through their system. So for the Western League to only have 3 20-year-olds for each team, I knew that it was a big feat for me to kind of stick around in Vancouver as a 20-year-old. So with that being said, they invited me into the room, I believe, when I was about 5 to 7 games into the season. I actually had some decent points up for myself in my 20-year-old start, which I can be proud of now. With that being said, they broke the news to me that I was not one of their 20-year-old selections, and that they had made a phone call to the Fort McMurray Oil Barons, where they believed that I could finish out my career and go to Fort Mac. I bit my lip a little bit while they were explaining it to me, but then very abruptly after, I said, "Save your phone call." I grabbed my garbage bag of hockey gear again, went into my car, and immediately picked up the phone and called Roy back. And said, "Hey, Roy, I've been to the WHL final 3 out of my 4 years here. I have a Memorial Cup ring now. U.S. divisions, BC divisions, and all these kind of accolades that have come through 4 years of my career." And I told him that I want to come back to Lethbridge and I want to win in my final year. And he basically said, "Okay, give me 5 minutes," and hung up the phone. And that was the longest 5 minutes of my life, kind of sitting and wondering what I was going to do. I remember I was still sitting in the parking lot talking on the phone with my dad, and he's kind of talking me back and calm down, everything will work out. And sure enough, my phone rings and it's Roy again saying, "Come on back. We'll get you in the lineup here in the next 24 hours. So I went back to my billet house, packed up my car, hit the road, and headed to Lethbridge.
And walk us through that season, because that was a special season for the Hurricanes. Now, granted, of course, you guys wouldn't win it, but what was that final like? And maybe talk about how the city got behind you guys and the Juha Metsola chants in the rink and everything.
Juha, yeah. No, for real, it was that scenario where I feel Lethbridge had been craving some success in their market for many years. And like you said, you touched on when I'd first come in my first stint with the Hurricanes, they were just kind of starting their rebuild phase. So when I had come back to the team, they were very much so into their rebuild. And we had some budding stars as far as the Dwight Kings, the Zach Boydchucks, that we could really kind of build some talent around in our first 2 lines. So coming back to the team, I was super excited. Because we were almost a team of underdogs that year. We didn't have high expectations out of us, but we had this kind of chemistry and these tools in our toolkit that kind of created a formula for success in junior hockey, because I'd seen so many years in past. We had complete buy-in. We had a leader in Michael Dick that was committed and passionate and holding his players accountable and being fair. And I feel that we had that total buy-in. A leader like Benny Wright and myself and Zach Boydchuk, these are players that go out on the ice continually, night in, night out sort of thing, and lead by example through action. So we didn't have that very vocal guy in the dressing room, but we had a lot of action guys. So when you think back and look at the team, we had three lines that were real solid, and a 4th line that really kind of came out on the ice and did some great things for us throughout the entire season. They surprised us in playoffs. And they had some big goals for us too throughout the season. So, coming back to a team that was, I saw potential in right away, just knowing the team from years past, but and knowing that Roy was 2 or 3 years into his rebuild phase. So I saw a ton of potential. And then coming back to a coach like Dickers, like I obviously being coached by Kevin Constantine, Don Hay, those are 2 really big names. So you talk about shoes to fill for Dickers, and if anything, he filled them and then some. He really opened my eyes to being a player's coach and really kind of having that open door policy, and really kind of having players in his corner. He went to bat for us with his boss and the fans and the board of directors and everything like that. So it was really exciting for me. And you talk about a 14-hour drive from BC, but that was a fun one for me because I was on my way back to something great.
You guys would, of course, go on to the final and lose. You would then go and play a couple of years with the University of Lethbridge Pronghorns, and you've been able to make Lethbridge your home. Maybe talk about why the decision to stay in Lethbridge and be such a productive member of the community, and as a whole, what does Lethbridge mean to you?
Well, Lethbridge is home. It's more home to me now than Millwoods ever was. For my sake, coming back to a place that was familiar to me. Obviously, I had my trades that I talked about that are pretty emotional for a young kid. So for me, it was important that when it was time for me to go back to hockey or go back to school, that I was going back to something familiar for me. And thinking back of the Vancouvers and the Everetts, Lethbridge was obviously a little bit closer to home than those two. So it was really an ideal decision, but I really got to take my hat off and give credit to Greg Gatto at the time, who was coaching of the Pronghorns. He had me on speed dial and was talking to me all the time. My AHL and East Coast offers didn't work out, so at one point I was sitting at home watching my belly grow around Christmas time, and he says, "Mike, come play some hockey." And sure enough, that's what I did. And looking back now, I'm really, really happy that I came back to Lethbridge and went to the U of L. I met my ex-wife. I had my son here. So when you talk about roots planted into a community, Lethbridge is home. I coach minor hockey with my son. I look to give back any way I possibly can at any point or any opportunity I have to give back to this community. And when we talk about the hockey world, I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for the Western Hockey League, for all my mentors. So any opportunity I have to really, talk about the Western Hockey League or minor hockey in a positive limelight, I'm going to do it and take that opportunity. I would like to touch on and bring some awareness to concussions. I did have to quit the game because of 10 plus concussions and the way I played. I think you can remember watching me play, and the doctor related it to me as the same injuries he sees into high speed car accidents. So I really just want to talk to the youth and share my experience, because if I could go back, I wouldn't change a single thing about how I played in that relentless attitude. But at the same time, I would maybe think twice about leading in with my head or kind of having that Superman attitude most days.
Yeah, it's always good to bring awareness to that for sure, especially as we move forward in society and knowledge when it comes to the human brain and everything. I guess lastly, Mike, I'll ask you this: is you talked about how you're a father now and you're coaching and you're still in Lethbridge. We know, people locally probably know, but for those that don't, you're a key member in Exhibition Park, which is a big part of the community here. So what's your role with those with the X, for those that don't know, and what's been new on the work side of things?
So there you see my smile, because this is my Stanley Cup, Forbesy. So I've been here. This is my, as of November 19th, I believe, was year 5. It's been that long. It's crazy. I got an 8-year-old kid, Forbesy. Look at his hairline. What's happening?
Look at mine, man.
I'm going to catch you, though. I'm on to you, buddy. When we talk about Exhibition Park, I came over and they just had actually rebranded the brand from the old Boots and Ropes logo there that was blue into the new EX logo. So in this 5 years time, we've gone through a rebrand. We've obviously delivered our signature events as far as Whoop Up Days, Home and Garden, Egg Expo, Eggy Days, Farmers Markets, all of our regular events that our community knows and loves so much. But in this whole whirlwind of a COVID exposure and this pandemic going on, we've actually managed to secure our funding for our new venue. So our community and our organization is about to get a real treat here. And as far as a real shiny new building for us all to enjoy and to really kind of grow our economic impact and invite people to Lethbridge and really kind of portray Lethbridge on that national stage.
Well, Mike, the work you've done locally with Exhibition Park and everything that you've done, and of course being a key member of the Hurricanes family and minor hockey in Lethbridge, can't thank you enough for all the work that you do. Continued success, and really appreciate you taking a half hour to reminisce about your time in the WHL and what life has been able to bring Mike Wuchterl since.
Thanks so much, Forbesy. Anytime, you know where to find me, sir. And just so everyone knows, next April, first week of April, is when the shovel goes in the ground.
Cannot wait locally for that. Absolutely. There's a 3-time WHL finalist, a 2-time Lethbridge Hurricane, and a Memorial Cup champion on another edition of a Saturday Sit Down. We hope you enjoyed it with Mike Wuchterl.